Hi there, everyone. It's 4 o'clock in New York. It hasn't even been 24 hours, but Kash Patel's testimony on Capitol Hill yesterday is already raising major alarm bells over whether or not the director of the FBI was telling the truth to Congress, not just about the news accounts of his excessive drinking on the job, the administration of polygraph tests at the FBI, or of firing agents for political reasons, but also about the very statistics that he relied upon to defend his job amid all those embarrassing headlines. According to brand new exclusive reporting from our colleagues Carol Leonnig and Ken Delanian, when it comes to the arrests Kash Patel boasted about yesterday, quote, Patel's FBI has imposed new policies that inflate these numbers and overstate the FBI's progress in stemming crime. That is according to a half dozen law enforcement sources with knowledge of the changes. Kash Patel's lack of transparency is even causing some from inside the FBI to speak out, with one current official telling MSNOW this, quote, they are absolutely padding the stats and claiming arrests they would not have claimed. And one former official adds this, quote, agents inside the Bureau complained frequently about Patel's bogus arrest numbers. Kash is definitely engineering things to pad his stats, the former official said. Here is what Kash Patel said yesterday before Congress.
We've arrested 8 of the top 10 most wanted fugitives in the world in 14 months. That's twice as many in the 4 years combined. That is what the men and women of the FBI are doing, well-resourced. Everyone should take a look at this. If people want to continue the baseless, fraudulent, false personal attacks at me, that's great. Keep the target on me, as I've always said, but the mission has never been better.
According to an MSNOW review under Kash Patel's leadership, quote, the FBI has manipulated that iconic Bureau program in a way that falsely suggests rapid progress. In that time, the Bureau has quickly added the names of some fugitives just hours or days before agents capture them. When reached for comment, the FBI disputed that arrests were being counted improperly without providing any specifics. Kash Patel being willing to inflate statistics about his agency's work to try to save his job is where we begin today with senior investigative reporter Carol Leonnig, whose byline is on that reporting. Also joining us, former assistant special agent in charge at the FBI, national security and intelligence analyst Michael Feinberg. Carol Leonnig, take us through what you're reporting.
Yeah, thanks, Nicole, for focusing on it. You know, my colleague Ken Delaney and I had been working on this for a little while, and then we'd been hearing tips for some time that the statistics that Kash Patel sometimes mentioned, they said were juiced or inflated unfairly and intentionally. And while we were working on this, Kash Patel is brought before the Senate to answer questions, and instead of answering those blistering questions, he waves a black placard in the air and says, this is the proof that I'm really running this agency quite well, and this is the FBI under my leadership, and started to cite these same statistics that we have been hearing were bogus. We began sort of concretizing our work, re-corroborating, going back to sources, and the two big findings were these. One, that the FBI has begun counting arrests, particularly immigration agents' arrests, whenever FBI agents are present or simply, assisting. FBI agents, as you know, Nicole, were ordered in the summer and the fall of this past year to begin going out in huge waves of teams, joining immigration agents and local police to try to arrest, detain, and eventually deport immigrants from this country at the behest of Stephen Miller, the White House Deputy Chief of Staff. So now all of those arrests are being counted as FBI arrests, which helps Mr. Patel, Director Patel, claim that there is a huge spike in arrests, at least in the way that he's counting them. The second big takeaway here, Nicole, is about, something that everyone in America probably recognizes about the FBI, the most wanted list. This is supposed to be the 10 people that are the most dangerous villains in the world, and that we've been hunting for them for possibly years. What my colleague Ken Delaney and I found in reviewing those, based on good information from sources, was that 4 of the 8 people that Kash Patel says were arrested from that fugitive list, that most villainous group, 4 were added within a month of actually being captured. And one of them was arrested in an hour and 13 minutes after being put on the list. As sources told us, these kinds of operations to seize dangerous fugitives don't happen in an hour and 13 minutes or even in 24 hours. And yet, again, 2 of the people that he says we famously captured were added to the list in a time when FBI agents said they knew they were going to arrest those people.
So I just want to make sure, let me just try to dumb down the 2 categories, the 2 ways the numbers are being fudged and inflated. The first one is if the FBI is assisting another law enforcement agency, federal or state, they're adding all those numbers, whether they were the top cops on the job or not. Is that right?
That's right. And whether they put cuffs on anyone.
And then the second is feels really manipulative. They know they're closing in on someone. They either have a wiretap approved, or they know that they've got the goods, or they have planned to make the arrest. So they add that name to the most wanted, and then just coincidentally capture them within hours, days, or weeks.
That's right. Again, 4 of the 8 were people who were arrested within a month. 2 of the 8 were arrested within 24 hours of being added to the list.
So Michael Feinberg, it's clear that Kash Patel thinks that we're dumb. I don't even know that Kash Patel would dispute that. But he also thinks that the Bureau is as dumb and as shallow as he is. And I wonder how this collides with the integrity of the men and women who are still there.
You know, I think I've said before on your program, I don't know a single person still at the FBI or who has recently left it that has the slightest iota of respect for Kash Patel. He is widely viewed as a clown within the organization, but he's a clown with a flamethrower, and a clown with a flamethrower can still do a lot of damage, and he has. To the individual lives of agents he's fired for political reasons, to the programs he has deprioritized in favor of immigration priorities, and, you know, just to the institution itself with the manipulation of statistics, as Carol and Ken have shown. But we can't put all the blame on Kash Patel. I'd be remiss if I did not point out that this is also a failure of oversight. At every hearing where he has struggled to defend himself and distract from the various allegations against his integrity and character and situational judgment, he has screamed or paraded the statistics about crimes like murder or rape or robbery or other violent crimes. Most members of Congress, most members of the Senate, most representatives have been to law school. And somebody who's been through the first week of law school should realize none of those crimes that Kash Patel mentions are actually federal crimes. They're all state offenses over which the FBI does not have primary or original jurisdiction. So this has been painfully obvious to many of us when he talks about the murder rate dropping, when he talks about violent crime being stopped. What he's actually doing is stealing credit and honor from state and local law enforcement agencies that are doing the majority of the work. And he's taking credit simply because there might have been one FBI task force member out there with them.
I take your point on oversight, but I take the point that the men and women who have made up the workforce of the FBI would find this sort of grifting honor offensive. But what does it say that, you know, it takes a piece of investigative journalism and that no one really pressed him on this in yesterday's questioning, Michael?
It's, I mean, look, I really think this is largely a failure of oversight. It should not be news to anybody in Congress or anybody in the media or anybody in the judiciary that Kash Patel dances around questions. And with very few exceptions, there have not been aggressive attempts to pin him down. Now, I do want to tie this back to the workforce you asked about for a second, though. And the reason the workforce may not be speaking about this largely is because the last thing that a real FBI agent cares about is statistics. You care about working your cases, you care about getting the bad guy off of the street, you care about protecting witnesses, and you care about making victims whole. Who gets credit doesn't matter. Whether it impresses the White House doesn't matter. Whether you can wave a flag and statistics in front of Congress does not matter either. The only people who care about those sorts of things are people like Kash Patel, who have no familiarity with the work and realize that the mission and the purpose has very little to do with the statistics you report.
Carol Leonnig, I put you on the spot yesterday when I asked you if Kash Patel was lying. Senator Van Hollen used the L word as well. Let me show you how that went.
You still haven't answered my final question. Do you know, Mr. Director, that it is a crime to lie to Congress? Do you know that?
I do not lie to Congress.
I didn't ask you that.
And you're insinuating that I am.
I asked you whether you know.
You want to correct your time in this session where you got steamrolled by the facts so you can have a Twitter narrative.
Mr.
So you can
Director,
go raise more money and spend more money on $7,000
just let the record
I'm not
show,
going to give
Mr.
it
Chairman.
to you.
The Director of the FBI apparently does not want to answer the question about whether or not it's a crime to lie to Congress, and I find that extremely troubling.
I find it troubling that you lie to the American people every day.
You are a disgrace, Mr. Director.
I mean, first of all, 2016 is calling and wants its Twitter relevance back. I can't imagine that any senator would be doing anything for Twitter on the Democratic side. But to the point of his response on just polygraphs, the administering polygraphs, which you reported this, quote, FBI Director Kash Patel ordered the polygraphing of more than 24 former and current members of his security detail, as well as other staff, and has been described as being in panic mode to save his job and find leakers among his team, according to two people briefed on the development. Let me play his answer when asked about that.
Have you ordered polygraph tests of members of your team to determine how that story came about?
The FBI conducts polygraph tests all the time.
No, have you ordered polygraph tests for members of your team to determine who was the source of the stories that I'm asking you about?
I don't order any polygraph tests. There's an internal inspection review process for any and all leaks, especially of baseless information at the FBI, that's been in place for the last 30 years. Those processes are followed by career intelligence and agents on the ground.
Not a complicated path of deception there to see, quote, I don't order any polygraph tests, but inherently misrepresenting the reality of what you and others have reported, Carol.
Yeah, and I understand, Nicole, you ask questions a little bit the way I do of various people I want information from, and I respect that. Don't feel badly about asking a direct question. I don't want to suggest to your viewers or anyone else that I know what's in Kash Patel's heart. But what I have said here and in other settings is that I saw the director say things that were false. Whether he intended to give false statements, I don't know. I saw him say things that did not mesh with what I know to be true. So it's problematic. And it's not the first time I've seen, a high-level administration official asked about some of my reporting. It is the first time I've seen a high-level administration official sort of duck actually directly answering it, and duck it so much as to mislead. It felt very misleading. We know those polygraphs happened. We know of now more polygraphs that have happened that we'll report in more detail at a later time. I want to go back for a second to the statistics, if I may, and pick up on something Mike Feinberg said as well. The FBI is not in the business of being cops. And I think the reason so many sources came to us over the last several weeks and days about these, what they consider bogus and manipulated stats, and which we were able to corroborate is happening. I think the reason they came to us was because they know they're not chasing down chasing down state crimes. They're not chasing down rapists and murderers, except as part of a federal conspiracy, as part of a federal crime. And they find it incredibly offensive that while they were pulled off of important duties that they have to go out into Minneapolis, St. Paul, Memphis, LA, Chicago, to ride along with immigration agents and find brown people and arrest them, they find that so offensive that that is now being used as a feather in the director's cap to say, wow, the FBI is just arresting so many more people than we did under President Biden. That just galls them.
I want to show you, Michael Feinberg, how Patel responded when confronted with the purging of agents, something that Brian Driscoll is actually out talking about a good deal in some of his first interviews. But this is Senator Van Hollen pressing Patel about purging agents with national security expertise, including encountering Iran.
The article says that these individuals were fired for their role in the classified documents investigations of Donald Trump. First of all, is that true?
The article, just like all the other articles you cited, is false. I terminated anyone and everyone that weaponized law enforcement.
I see. So it was related, obviously, to the classified documents case. So
that's not what I said.
I guess my question is, if all the articles are false, which is his testimony under oath, why are there polygraphs and leak investigations?
So before I answer your question, I want to point something out because there is more to that exchange than we just saw. I'm friends with the overwhelming majority of the agents that were being discussed in that exchange. I came of age with many of them in the Bureau. We served in multiple offices and headquarters together. They were some of the, and I do not use this term lightly, the best and the brightest with whom I ever worked. And to say that they were not fired because of their work on the Mar-a-Lago investigation stretches credulity beyond its breaking point. Perhaps it is a coincidence that all of them came from the squad to which that case was assigned. Maybe, but I would certainly call it a statistical anomaly, and I think it needs to be fleshed out considerably more next time there is a change in congressional oversight. As for why he's doing polygraphs and why he is so concerned about leaks of non-classified information that is almost entirely made up of rumors about him, it's the same reason a schoolyard bully flexes his or her muscles on a third grade playground. They're vain, insecure, and know that once you strip away their pomposity, they have nothing to actually show for themselves. This is no different than the children's fable, the Emperor's New Clothes. Mm-hmm. Scratch the surface of Kash Patel, and there's nothing but more surface. There isn't depth there. There isn't strategy. There isn't investigative acumen. There is service to the president and only the president at the expense of the American people. But he knows the more embarrassed he gets by these accusations, by these allegations, and by these rumors, particularly as many of them turn out to be true, he loses favor with that president. So he lashes out like a panicked animal and orders polygraphs.
Yeah, it is stunning to consume the reporting about that, and it is equally stunning to watch his disdain for the other branch of government when they ask about it. All of it is a marvel. No one's going anywhere. There's more reporting on this front. Also ahead for us today, from his trip to China to a shakedown of the IRS, we'll look at Donald Trump's race to squeeze every last penny from the American taxpayers who elected him. and put those pennies, dollars, and more into his own coffers and those of his family. And later in the broadcast, a shattered Iranian military is what they talk about. So Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth have described what is left of Iran since the U.S. went to war there now more than 70 days ago. But unsurprising to many, there's brand new reporting in the New York Times that shows that that isn't true either. We'll get to those new stories and much more when Deadline White House continues after a quick break. Don't go anywhere.
Chair, that you can't save everybody. I disagreed. I said that this is wrong. You could potentially be deposed for this in the future, and that this is worth standing up for. And he essentially reflected that his job depended on him making this happen, and that anybody involved in these investigations that they identify are probably going to get fired as well.
I don't know that I've ever heard it disclosed that they so fundamentally do not understand the nameless stars on the wall at the CIA, the code among one another inside the FBI, the ethos at the military, and again, that's more opaque than just about anything. So I don't know how Pete Hegseth sees that, but the idea that Kash Patel sat across from Brian Driscoll and said, you can't save everybody, that is precisely what the men and women of the FBI who put their lives on the line do. I mean, that is precisely why it's such a dangerous vocation. I mean, this explains the figures. I think, Carol, you reported 2,800 agents have left the Bureau in 15 months. It's an unprecedented hollowing out. We talk about hollowing out. We don't really think about what that means or how many people. 2,800 agents have left the FBI. And that is why Kash Patel fundamentally doesn't understand the Bureau and the men and women in it.
Yeah, heavy sigh there because, you know, for many years, reporters in Washington have kept tabs on sort of attrition rates in federal agencies to determine, you know, where's a good workforce? Where's a good workplace? Where's a good place to work? What agencies are not working well? And the FBI for a long time had a pretty modest amount of people that would leave in the course of a year. 700 was the average in the last several years. Now 2,800, according to internal statistics that were shared with us at MSNOW for the purposes of this story. And to your running thread, Nicole, about, you know, did Director Patel lie to Congress? He said morale, in answer to a question, said morale has never been better. That just caught a lot of people sort of grabbing for their throats and gasping in the press corps and watching at home on TV, and agents actually in their offices, because morale has never been lower, and these numbers establish it.
Michael Feinberg, it is clear that Kash Patel was not, in good faith, responding truthfully to the questions put to him in testimony yesterday. But I actually find it more gobsmacking to hear Brian Driscoll's account of what Kash Patel said about the purge. Quote, you can't save everyone.
Saving everyone is literally what we all signed up to do. We forsook higher paying careers in the private sector, personal opportunities. We gave up the ability to choose in which city we and our families would live. We put our lives at risk weekly to arrest and apprehend dangerous fugitives, to disrupt terrorist plots, and to save our country's secrets from foreign adversaries. The fact that Patel would look the former commander of the hostage rescue team in the eye and say you can't save everyone reveals nothing so much as the utter hollowness of his soul. I apologize for putting it so starkly, but Kash Patel does not understand how an FBI agent views the world. He has made no attempt to learn what that looks like. And because of that, and because of his constant dissembling, there is not a single gun-carrying agent in the workforce who trusts him or takes him at his word.
I want you to say more about what that means on a day-to-day basis for the men and women who, I don't know, there's not a lot of operational evidence of his stewardship of the Bureau, but at least in title and on an org chart, he still sits atop it. What does that collision of values and perspective and training and expertise and honor look like day to day, Michael Feinberg?
So it matters to the workforce in terms of morale, but not to the point where they're going to stop doing their jobs. We never did our jobs or risked our own lives to please the director or to please a president. We did it because people needed protecting and it was the right thing to do. And in articulating that just now, a thought sort of came to my mind that I think is apropos here in light of yesterday's hearing. Somewhere in the country, a man or a woman was watching C-SPAN or MSNOW or CNN or some network that was covering those hearings. And some of those viewers might have lost a child to murder. Some of them may have been violently attacked themselves. Maybe one of them knew somebody who was in the Twin Towers when they came down. And they have the right, the expectation to look at the FBI director and know that the organization that is now charged with protecting them and making them whole from those crimes is in good hands, and that the director is a person of sober judgment, emotional maturity, and presence. And at no public appearance has Kash Patel ever exhibited any of those qualities. And at the risk of sounding cloyingly idealistic, the American people deserve better. We pay our taxes, we follow the law, we do our civic duty, we help our neighbors, we volunteer when people are in trouble. The average citizen deserves to know that the FBI director takes his civic responsibility as seriously as they do. And he has never done a single thing since assuming that office to provide them that reassurance.
Quite to the contrary. I mean, the things that we can see with our own eyes prove the opposite point. Guzzling beer, spraying it all over, having a bottle of bourbon made with his name on it, with the dollar, with the S replaced by a dollar sign. A really powerful point. Michael Feinberg, thank you for that. Carol Leonnig, thank you for your reporting. Thank you both for starting us off again today. Coming up next for us, Donald Trump's trip to China could end up being a big sellout for America in order to enrich Donald Trump and his kids and their business interests. And that's just the trip to China. We'll bring you that story next.